Olympic lifts are unique movements consisting of nuanced combinations of strength, speed, mobility, and precision. Technical proficiency is a critical element of successful lifting, both with respect to competition and the effectiveness of the lifts and their variants for athletic training. This DVD will provide guidance in learning and teaching lift technique to the degree allowable in such a format. It should be understood that no DVD or book will ever be as effective as ongoing interaction with a qualified coach. Viewers are encouraged to seek out such instruction to complement the information contained here. The fundamental principles of the snatch, clean, and jerk are universal, although expressed in distinctive manners. Described in the simplest possible terms, all three lifts employ the generation of force against the ground to first accelerate the barbell upward, then use force against the elevated barbell to accelerate the athlete downward and into position to receive the bar. We'll break the snatch and clean into three phases: the first pull, second pull, and third pull. The first pull is the phase in which the barbell is lifted from the floor to the point at which the scoop begins, typically when the barbell reaches approximately mid-thigh. The second pull begins at approximately mid-thigh and finishes with the complete upward extension of the body. This is the final and maximal effort by the athlete to accelerate and elevate the bar. The third pull is the athlete's transition from the extended position into the receiving position under the barbell. As the name suggests, this is an active and aggressive pull underneath the bar. The terms hang and power describe variations of the competition lifts. Hang indicates that the lift is initiated with the barbell at some position above the floor, most commonly between the knees and mid-thigh. It has no effect on the receiving position. Power indicates that the athlete receives the bar and arrests downward movement with the thighs above horizontal. It has no effect on the starting position. The squat is foundational to the Olympic lifts as a position, a movement, and a strength exercise. Our first step in teaching the squat is to find a starting foot position. The athlete will simply place the heels just outside the width of the hips and turn the toes out to approximately 10 to 30 degrees. With this stance established, he or she will squat down and relax as much as possible in the bottommost position, letting the knee joint close completely. From this bottom position, the athlete will make adjustments until the thigh is approximately parallel with the foot and the knee is approximately above the toe when viewed from the front of the foot. The degree of external hip rotation can be experimented with until a comfortable position is established. The legs will need to be directed outward to some degree to allow the hips to sit between the thighs. With the stance established, we need to place the athlete into the bottom of the squat with the proper hip and spine positions. The athlete will set the back in complete extension and lower him or herself into the bottom position of the squat while maintaining that extension. He or she will not be able to reach the same depth possible with the back relaxed, but it will be similar. The head and eyes should be directed straight forward and the weight balanced across the foot with a slight preference for the heel. Once the squat positioning has been established, the athlete can practice the basic movement of the squat. The descent should be controlled with a focus on maintaining tension throughout the trunk and legs. After reaching the bottom, the athlete should return to the top by extending the knees and hips together in order to maintain an upright posture. The bounce is a phenomenon occurring in certain squatting circumstances, particularly the recovery of the clean. It's an elastic rebound involving three elements: the whip of the barbell, the stretch-shortening reflex of the leg muscles, and the literal bounce of the upper legs off the lower legs. For many lifters, the bounce is the only way they can successfully recover from heavy cleans. It should be used in the clean by all lifters to reduce the recovery effort as much as possible and save the legs for the jerk. It's important to understand that despite the speed involved, catching the bounce in the squat does not involve collapsing under the weight. The lifter must remain tight throughout the legs, hips, and trunk while allowing acceleration into the bottom position, then immediately changing directions and forcefully driving up. Not only would relaxing invite injury, but the largest component of the bounce, the stretch reflex, cannot occur if the muscles in question are relaxed. Athletes should practice the bounce with unloaded squats before attempting to employ it with weighted squats or cleans. The descent should be controlled until the thighs reach approximately horizontal, at which time the athlete should accelerate into the bottom and immediately change directions as they feel the knee joint close maximally. Unless working on technical issues, the bounce should always be used in the clean. Using the bounce with front squats is usually appropriate to train for the clean. The back squat should generally be performed with a more controlled speed through the bottom. The most basic weighted squat variation is the back squat, which is a staple for all strength training. Only a few details need to be addressed with regard to its performance in addition to those just described. First is the placement of the barbell on the back. The athlete will first retract the shoulder blades completely and elevate them slightly. The bar will sit between the top of the traps and the top of the shoulders and should be in contact only with muscle. It should not be in contact with the bony protrusions of the cervical or thoracic spine. The athlete should grip the bar with the hands just outside the shoulders. This close hand placement will help reinforce the retraction of the shoulder blades and the extension of the upper back. The elbows should be kept under the bar or very slightly behind it. Allowing the elbows to rotate too far behind the bar will encourage forward rounding of the upper back and forward leaning of the torso during recovery. The thumbs should be wrapped around the bar along with the rest of the fingers. The back squat is performed in the same manner described previously. The athlete will move the knees and hips together to keep the posture upright, maintaining tension throughout the legs and trunk, keeping the weight balanced across the foot with a slight preference for the heel. Initially, the squat should be performed at a controlled speed with a brief pause in the bottom position. Once athletes are comfortable with the movement, they can change directions immediately at the bottom and should attempt to accelerate throughout the entire squat recovery. Breath control is critical for increasing and maintaining the structural integrity of the torso while under heavy loads. In order to adequately stabilize the spine, the abdominal and thoracic cavities must be pressurized with air. The athlete will need to draw in as much air as possible, allowing the abdomen to expand and the diaphragm to contract. Filling the lungs partially by only allowing the chest to lift and expand is not adequate. Once this breath is taken, the lifter will tighten down the abdominal and back musculature. It's critical the athlete not draw in the abdominals. We want the muscles activated tightly while keeping the torso as wide and deep as possible, creating a broad foundation. It may help athletes having difficulty with this activation to think of pushing the abs down. Pressurization should be maintained throughout the movement. The lifter can release a small amount of air under control if this is found to be helpful or is necessary to prevent dizziness. For the snatch and clean, there will be two foot positions, pulling and receiving. The receiving position has already been established. It's the same as the position for the squat. This will be the foot positioning used to receive the snatch, clean, power snatch, power clean, and power jerk, and will be the stance used in all squat variations. To establish the pulling position, the feet will be placed approximately under the hips and turned out to whatever degree is comfortable for the athlete, generally about 5 to 15 degrees from center. The athlete's line of gravity is a plane that splits the athlete's center of mass in half and describes the point of balance over the feet. During the lifts, the line of gravity should pass approximately through the front edge of the heel. Standing still, this balance can be felt simply by the slightly greater pressure on the heels relative to the balls of the feet. With the foot positions established, we can proceed to drilling the transition between them. Starting in the pulling position, the athlete will transition the feet to the receiving position as rapidly as possible with as little elevation of the feet as necessary, landing at quarter squat depth. This transition must be aggressive, and the reconnection of the feet with the platform should produce an audible clap. Note that this clap should be a product of speed and aggressiveness, not of elevation. This drill should be practiced until consistency in the correct position is achieved. The double knee bend is a phenomenon that occurs in the final stage of the lifter's extension. As the knees near extension and the bar reaches approximately the level of mid-thigh, the athlete initiates the final violent extension of the hips. As this hip extension occurs, the knees flex slightly while they shift forward under the bar and then immediately extend again along with the hips. This movement is a product of two elements, the biarticular nature of the hamstrings and a need for the body to maintain balance. Because the hamstrings group crosses both the hip and knee joints, the contraction of the hamstrings to affect the aggressive extension of the hip causes the knee to flex involuntarily. As this flexion is occurring, the hips are extending, which forces the partially flexed knees forward under the bar in order to maintain balance with the upper body suddenly moving backward. This knee flexion is abruptly reversed through the continued voluntary extension of the knees in the lifter's effort to extend the entire body in order to accelerate the barbell upward. While teaching the double knee bend in the strictest sense isn't possible, because it can be a confusing concept for both athletes and coaches, it's helpful to have a way to introduce the concept, allow athletes to feel the movement occurring, and allow coaches to observe it. This is fairly easily accomplished with the vertical jump. With the feet in the pulling position, the athlete will bend the knees slightly and hinge at the hips, bringing the shins to vertical, the shoulders in front of the knees, and the weight toward the heels. From this position, without a counter movement, the athlete will simply jump as high as he or she can. To anyone observing, such as a coach or other athletes, the knees should be the focus. It will be clear that as the athlete initiates the jump, the knees drive forward before extending. It's important that the athlete jumping not be given any instruction to shift the knees forward, only to jump straight up. If not tampered with, this same motion of the knees will occur naturally during the snatch and clean. If the athlete attempts to perform the movement consciously, the timing will be improper, the speed of the lift will be reduced, and the athlete's balance will likely be shifted forward undesirably. The hook grip is a pronated grip in which the thumb is trapped between the bar and the first and second fingers. For the pull of both the snatch and the clean, this method of gripping is a necessity to maintain control of the barbell during the violent second pull and the powerful turnover. By wrapping the thumb around the bar directly, we create a powerful hook, which can then be reinforced by the grip of both the index and middle fingers, which should actively pull the thumb around the bar rather than just push against it. This allows the thumb to reach around the bar enough to significantly contribute to grip integrity without limiting the ability of the fingers to wrap around the bar adequately to grip it. Additionally, the hook grip counters the tendency of the bar to roll. The bar will try to roll out of the thumb in one direction and out of the fingers in the opposite direction, eliminating to a great degree the spinning element of grip loss. The snatch is the first of the two lifts contested in weightlifting, in which the barbell is lifted from the floor to overhead in a single movement. The fundamental pulling mechanics of the snatch apply to that of the clean, and to a lesser degree to the drive of the jerk. Information in this section will be useful to the viewer in later sections. If very light barbells are available, such as 5 to 10 kilos, their use for athletes who are strong enough to handle them for the following drills is preferable. However, most athletes will need to use a length of 3/4 inch PVC pipe or a similar implement for the initial learning progression for the snatch. To quickly determine a starting hand placement, the athlete will stand upright and hold a bar with the hook grip at arm's length. From this position, the width of the hands will be adjusted until the bar rests in the crease of the hips. In order to be sure the bar is in the crease of the hips, the athlete can simply lift one knee slightly. If the bar is lifted as the thigh rises, it's too low. The bar should be just above the pubic bone and not in contact with it. This hand placement will serve as a solid starting point from which adjustments can be made later to accommodate each athlete's strengths, weaknesses, and personal preference. Lifters with unusual proportions will find that this can place their hands far too wide or narrow. Adjustments should be made in these cases to achieve about 6 inches of space between the bar and the top of the head when in the overhead position. The overhead position in the snatch is critical for successful lifting. In preparation for receiving and supporting heavy loads, we need to establish strong and structurally sound positioning. To quickly find the correct overhead position, the athlete will take a snatch width hand placement with no hook grip on the bar and place it across the shoulders behind the neck as he or she would for a back squat. The shoulder blades should be fully retracted and upwardly rotated slightly. This shoulder position is often most easily achieved if the athlete imagines pinching the upper inside edges of the shoulder blades together. The shoulders should not be shrugged up any more than naturally occurs with this effort. From this position, the athlete will press the bar straight up with no change to the torso or shoulder positions. The bar should be over the back of the neck with the head pushed forward slightly and facing straight forward. The elbows must be locked completely in extension and the points of the elbows oriented halfway between down and back. The hands should be relaxed, cradling the bar rather than gripping it tightly, with the wrist allowed to extend back and the heel of the palm driven up aggressively. The bar should be in the palm, slightly behind the center of the wrist, with the fingers wrapped around it completely. The overhead squat is the position in which the lifter will receive the bar in a snatch. All of the position requirements described previously for the squat must be met for the overhead squat as well. The athlete will simply press the bar into the overhead position, establish stability, and perform a squat, maintaining the bar's position over the back of the neck. In this early learning stage, the athlete should pause in the bottom of each squat for a couple seconds to ensure balance, feel the position, and stretch before standing. With the overhead squat positioning established, we can begin introducing layers of complexity and speed to better prepare the athlete to receive the bar in the snatch. The pressing snatch balance introduces the athlete to the basic movement pattern, positioning, and timing of the snatch balance, and acts as well as an active stretching drill. The lifter will begin with the feet in the receiving position and the bar racked across the back with a snatch width hand placement in the same manner that was used to establish the overhead position earlier. At a deliberate speed, the athlete will press him or herself down under the bar without elevating it until reaching the bottom position of an overhead squat. The athlete should again hold this bottom position momentarily before recovering with the bar still overhead. The drop snatch adds the element of speed to the pressing snatch balance. The athlete will start with the bar on the back in a snatch width grip again, but now with the feet in the pulling position. As quickly as possible, the athlete will transition the feet to the receiving position just as in the earlier foot transition drill, and aggressively punch down under the bar into the bottom of the overhead squat. Again, the goal is to not elevate the bar, but to drive the body down underneath it. After settling in the bottom and establishing stability, the athlete will stand with the bar overhead. This series is completed with the snatch balance. This step adds a dip and drive with the legs prior to the punch under of the drop snatch. This will later allow the athlete to use heavier weights in training than are possible with the drop snatch. This dip and drive is not to drive the bar up, but to unweight it momentarily and give the athlete an opportunity to drive under it. There should still be minimal bar elevation. Although it will often appear to occur simultaneously, the feet will reconnect with the platform before the drive under the bar has been completed. The athlete needs to simply allow him or herself to sit into the squat as the elbows finish extension. It's important that new lifters learn how to properly miss failed snatches, both to keep them safe and to avoid self-imposed limitations due to the fear of missing. It's possible to drop a snatch forward or backward. Which direction the bar is dropped is determined by the direction the bar is already moving, not the lifter's preference. Misses in front will usually be dropped naturally without a problem. The key is to make sure the bar is guided out away from the body and doesn't drop straight down onto the athlete's legs. The lifter can practice this with PVC or a light barbell from the bottom of the overhead squat. Missing snatches behind is more intimidating to most athletes, and some will try to fight it. The key is to keep the hands on the bar loosely and the arms as straight as possible to guide the bar back in an arc away from the body while jumping the body forward out of the way of the bar. With the receiving position of the snatch now established, we need to learn the movement that will deliver us there. This is accomplished by breaking the whole movement into a series of brief sections to isolate elements of the lift. Our first step is establishing what we will call the mid-hang position, in which the bar will start at approximately mid-thigh level. This will position the athlete in what will become the beginning of the second pull, that is, the position he or she will be in immediately prior to the initiation of the final upward explosion. This starting position begins familiarizing the athlete with the proper positioning for the all-important second pull and allows the double knee bend to occur naturally as it should with no specific instruction. With the snatch with hand placement and the hook grip on the bar, the athlete will stand with the feet in the pulling position. The wrists should be neutral and the elbows rotated to point to the sides as much as possible without rounding the shoulders forward. The shoulder blades should remain in a neutral position. The athlete will arch the back completely and push the hips back, bending the knees slightly and, using the lats and shoulders to keep the bar in contact with the legs, slide the bar down to the level of mid-thigh. The athlete should arrive in a position in which the shins are vertical, the shoulders are slightly in front of both the bar and the knees, the arms are long and relaxed, and the face and eyes are directed straight forward. The shoulder blades should be depressed somewhat as part of the back extension effort. The athlete's weight should be over the heels more than the balls of the feet, and the hamstrings, glutes, and back under obvious tension. The actual angle of the back and how far forward of the bar the shoulders are will vary among athletes depending on their body segment lengths. The key points are approximately vertical shins, slight knee bend, and the shoulders slightly ahead of the bar and knees. The athlete should practice entering and finding this position until it's consistently accurate. Our introduction to the movement of the snatch is extremely simple but equally important. This drill will lay the foundation for the lifts both in principle and in movement. Starting in the mid-hang position, the athlete will jump vertically as high as possible. The main focus should be aggressive leg drive against the ground with a simultaneous effort to extend the hips slightly beyond neutral with a forceful glute contraction. The bar should simply be brought into contact at the hips as the athlete extends. Prior to each jump, the athlete should be sure to have his or her weight balanced towards the heels and to prevent a last-moment shift to the balls of the feet before initiating the jump, which will be a very common mistake. The athlete should not be moving forward or backward during this drill. This jump should be repeated until the athlete is moving quickly and aggressively, his or her weight is balanced correctly, and the hips are opening completely. The mid-hang snatch pull brings together the aggressive hip and knee extension of the previous jumping drills and the control necessary to channel it into upward acceleration of the barbell. This movement, the second pull of the lift in isolation, is responsible for the overwhelming majority of the barbell's upward acceleration in the snatch. Before performing the actual pull, the athlete will place himself into an approximation of the final extension position. With the bar held in a snatch width grip, the athlete will stand in the pulling position, open the hips beyond neutral by contracting the glutes and pushing the hips through the bar slightly, and shift to the heels. This will place the legs approximately vertical when viewed from the side, the hips open slightly beyond neutral, and the shoulders behind the hips. This is the approximate position of the body we should see at the top of the snatch pull, ignoring the flatness of the feet. From this extended position, the athlete will slowly push the hips back and slide the bar down into the mid-hang position practiced previously. After setting the mid-hang position for a moment, the athlete will slowly return to the extension position, keeping the bar close to the thighs with the lats and shoulders. The bar should contact the hips as they extend. The athlete will repeat this extension movement, speeding up slightly with each rep and making sure to set the mid-hang position perfectly each time before beginning. With an essentially weightless implement, the athlete will not be able to perform the movement at full power. This drill is only an approximation of the movement and must be controlled to ensure proper positioning. The arms should remain as relaxed as possible during this extension. They remain straight not because the athlete is actively extending the elbows, but because the athlete is not bending them. However, the back must be engaged to continue pulling the bar back and up into the hips. The shrug, often taught as a continuation of the lifter's upward extension, should not be part of the effort to accelerate the barbell upward. The shrug is part of the athlete's effort to pull under the bar with the arms, as we will see later. During this drill, however, the athlete will need to shrug simply to give the upwardly accelerated barbell somewhere to go other than forward. The bar should remain in immediate proximity to the body. After each pull, the shoulders should be allowed to drop back to neutral immediately. Similarly, the athlete should immediately drop back to flat feet after each extension. This will help prevent developing a habit of prolonging the pull. The next drill is simply the movement of the arms during the third pull. In an actual snatch, the arms bend only to pull the lifter underneath the bar, and consequently, we should see no elbow flexion without concurrent downward travel of the lifter's body. At this stage, however, we simplify to isolate the movement pattern of the arms. Beginning in the tall position, the athlete will pull the elbows upward and outward to elevate the bar. The importance of rotating the elbows outward will become apparent here. This orientation will encourage the elbows to move out to the sides as they are elevated, which keeps the bar close to the body, and the body close to the bar. A shrug of the shoulders will naturally accompany the effort to maximally elevate the elbows. It should not be the focus of the movement. Once the elbows reach their maximum height, the athlete will turn the arms over to bring the bar into the overhead position, keeping the bar as close to the face as possible. The elbows should never drop from their elevated position. They should remain in approximately the same position as the arms turn over, and then drive up to finalize the overhead position. The athlete must maintain constant tension on the arms during this movement, continuing the effort to pull the elbows up and out even while turning the arms over. As the hands reach the top of the movement, the wrist should be flipped over and allowed to settle back with a relaxed hand into extension. This flipping of the wrist and relaxing of the hand should allow the hook grip to be released smoothly and quickly, although the weightlessness of a technique barbell or PVC pipe will make this more difficult. The bar should be secured tightly overhead with aggressive elbow extension, retracted shoulder blades, and the heels of the palm pushed up. The finalization of the turnover is an active punch up against the bar, not a backward pull into position. This vertical force against the bar is the only way the athlete will be able to stabilize and support heavy weights overhead. Once the movement is sound at low speeds, it can be executed as rapidly as possible. In a snatch, the pull under and the turnover of the bar must be just as aggressive as the upward acceleration of the bar. The scarecrow snatch drill is an abbreviation of the action of pulling under the bar into the receiving position. This movement introduces the feeling of turning over the bar while transitioning the feet, as will occur during the third pull of the lift, and forces the athlete to initiate the movement with correctly positioned elbows. The athlete will begin standing with the feet in the pulling position, the shoulders shrugged and retracted, the elbows elevated maximally, and the bar against the body below the elbows, what we'll call for obvious reasons the scarecrow position. From here, the athlete will pull him or herself under the bar as aggressively as possible, turning it over into the overhead position while moving the feet from the pulling to the receiving position, landing at approximately quarter squat depth. The athlete should attempt to initiate the foot transition before the pull of the arms. If the athlete attempts to move the feet and arms simultaneously, there will typically be a delay before the feet actually move, transforming the drill of pulling under the bar into one of lifting the bar up. The movement of the arms is identical to that practiced in the previous drill, and the movement of the feet is identical to the foot positioning drill practiced earlier. Although the athlete will attempt to pull under the bar while elevating it as little as possible, the bar will travel upward unavoidably due to its extremely light weight. The athlete should attempt to punch the bar into place overhead at the same time the feet reconnect with the platform. Although in the snatch the feet will actually reconnect with the platform well before the bar reaches its final position overhead, the effort will encourage speed and decisiveness that will carry over into the lift. Once settled in this receiving position, the athlete will recover to a standing position with the bar still overhead, maintaining active elbow extension and tight retraction of the shoulder blades. When the athlete is able to perform this drill satisfactorily in terms of position, movement, and speed, it should be performed with a full squat receiving position. With the squat variation of the drill, the athlete should still attempt to complete the turnover of the bar as quickly as possible. Because there is virtually no weight, this turnover will be completed relatively early in the movement and with the athlete in a relatively high squat position. This will happen with the snatch as well. That is, depending on the weight on the bar, the turnover may be completed considerably high. So the athlete needs to begin practicing receiving the bar at this height and smoothly continuing into the bottom of the squat with the bar already secured overhead. It's important the athlete not try to jump down into the bottom of the squat and let the bar crash down, but instead remain tightly connected to the bar. Building on the movement of the scarecrow snatch, the tall snatch begins instead in the tall position. Starting in the tall position with the feet in the pulling position and flat on the platform, the athlete will transition the feet into the receiving position while pulling under with the arms aggressively into a quarter squat position. Because this drill begins prior to the elbows elevation, athletes will have a tendency to stiffen the elbows and swing the bar away from the body. The elbows must be turned out in the starting position and focus directed on pulling the elbows to the sides as they travel up. Once the tall snatch can be performed well at the quarter squat depth, the athlete should progress to receiving the bar in a full squat. Just like in the scarecrow snatch, the athlete should complete the turnover of the bar as quickly as possible and ride the overhead squat into the bottom fluidly. The final drill assembles all the elements of the previous sections into a mid-hang snatch, initially a power snatch. Beginning in the mid-hang position, the athlete will extend the body with aggression as he or she did in the mid-hang snatch pull, using the back and shoulders to pull the bar back up into contact with the hips. At the completion of knee and hip extension, the athlete will immediately transition the feet to the receiving position and use the arms to aggressively pull under the bar, keeping the elbows out and the bar and body in immediate proximity to each other. The lifter will turn the bar over and punch it up into the correct overhead position. This receiving position should be held momentarily to ensure proper position and balance before standing again. Once the power snatch is performed correctly, the athlete will repeat the drill with a full squat receiving position. Again, the movement should be identical, with the bar being fixed in the overhead position as soon as possible, and the athlete riding it down into the bottom of the squat. The athlete has now performed a snatch from the hang position. If the athlete has used a PVC pipe for the previous learning drills, he or she should now practice the overhead squat, snatch balance, mid-hang power snatch, and mid-hang snatch with a barbell. A lightweight technique bar may also be used. When these lifts are satisfactory with the new weight, we can move on to lifting from the floor. At this point, the athlete is able to perform a snatch and power snatch from the mid-hang position with at least a lightweight barbell. To complete the snatch, we need to introduce the pull from the floor. Our first step in teaching the pull from the floor is the starting position. The feet will be placed in the same pulling position used to this point and the barbell placed over the balls of the feet. The athlete will place a snatch width grip on the bar, arch the back completely, drop the hips and lift the chest until the shoulders are directly above the bar, orienting the arms approximately vertically when viewed from the lifter's side. The elbows should be turned out to the sides as much as possible. The knees should be flared out inside the arms without moving the feet to help open the hips and allow a more upright posture. Depending on how the lifter is built, the hips may be above or below the knees. The head should remain oriented straight forward along with the eyes, the bar should be close to the shins but not in contact, and the weight should be balanced over the feet. With our starting position established, we need to rise to a standing position with the bar. Our goal is to keep the shoulders over the bar as long as possible, keep the bar in immediate proximity to the body, and maintain balance over the feet. The athlete should tighten the starting position and squeeze the bar off the floor. No jerking should occur. The lift at this stage should be slow and controlled with a focus on maintaining correct positioning and balance. Below the knees, the barbell should be in very close proximity to the shins, but not in contact. As it passes the knees, the lifter must keep the back engaged to pull the bar back towards the thighs and keep it in immediate proximity. The bar should come into contact with the body as it reaches the hips from the athlete actively pulling it back and up. At this point, the shoulders should still be slightly in front of the bar. Hip extension will then be completed with activation of the glutes, bringing the shoulders slightly behind the hips in the finished position. The snatch deadlift should be practiced until the athlete demonstrates consistently correct positioning and balance. To progress to snatching from the floor, we'll use a 3-position snatch working from the top down. This is a great way to place the athlete in a position in which he or she is already comfortable, and then incrementally increase the range of motion. This series will first be performed with power snatches to both simplify the movement somewhat and to encourage complete extension and a quicker turnover. The athlete will snatch deadlift the bar and carefully lower it to the mid-hang position. This position should be set momentarily to allow the athlete to settle into it with proper balance and tension. Once set correctly, the athlete will perform a power snatch. With the completion of the first power snatch from mid-thigh, the athlete will lower the bar to the top of the knees. Once this position is set, the athlete will power snatch again. It's important that the athlete drives first with the legs to bring the bar to mid-thigh, rather than starting immediately with hip extension from this position. The bar will then be lowered to the floor for the final power snatch in the series. At this point, the pull from the floor should be slow and controlled, if necessary for correct positioning, extremely slow. The priority is maintaining correct positioning, and more specifically, moving into the correct mid-thigh position before snatching, keeping the shoulders in front of the bar until it reaches the hips. However, even with the slowest initial pull, there should be no pause at any point on the way up. After becoming comfortable with a 3-position power snatch, the athlete will repeat the series with snatches. Again, the lifts should be identical. The athlete will still extend completely, turn the bar over and fix it overhead as quickly as possible, but will now continue to sit into a full squat. The athlete should sit in the bottom for a moment to ensure proper positioning each time before standing. Once the athlete demonstrates an ability to snatch well from the floor, the hang positions can be eliminated. The athlete is now capable of performing the complete snatch and power snatch. The clean is the first lift of the 2-part clean and jerk, in which the bar is lifted from the floor to the shoulders, from where it can then be jerked overhead. For the following clean learning progressions, the athlete should use an empty barbell or a lightweight technique barbell if necessary. The starting point for hand placement in the clean is approximately half a fist to a fist width outside the shoulders. With this hand placement and the bar against the shoulders, the forearms should be able to be held approximately vertical when viewed from any direction. In any case, the hands should not contact the shoulders at all. This hand placement will work for both the clean and the jerk without any adjustment between the two lifts. As the athlete progresses, he or she may choose to employ different hand placements for each lift. As in the snatch, the hook grip is used for the pull of the clean. The receiving position for the clean is the front squat, in which the bar is racked on the lifter's shoulders to allow direct support by the torso. What's critical for the athlete to understand is that the barbell is absolutely not supported by the hands and arms. The weight is supported by the shoulders and consequently by the trunk directly. The hands provide a degree of resistance against bar movement and can be used to help correct poor positioning, but should never be used as direct support. Frankenstein squats will introduce the feeling of a direct connection between the barbell and the shoulders and provide the athlete confidence in the ability to support the bar without the use of the hands. The athlete will place the barbell across the shoulders, release the grip, and extend the arms horizontally, pushing the shoulders forward and up to create a stable shelf for the bar, which should be in light contact with the throat. The bar should rest in the depression behind the muscle of the deltoids. Once the bar is stabilized, the athlete can squat with no movement of the bar. It's important that the athlete push the shoulders forward without rounding the upper back. Once the athlete is comfortable with this position and is able to squat without the bar rolling down the arms, we can proceed to the actual front squat and clean rack position. The athlete will regrip the barbell with the clean hand placement and bring it to the shoulders. Lifting the elbows as high as possible and driving the shoulders forward and up, the athlete will loosen the grip and allow the bar to roll out of the hands onto the fingers. This will deliver the bar to the shelf created by the shoulders and place it in light contact with the throat. Again, the shoulders must be pushed forward so the bar can sit behind the muscle of the deltoid, and should also be shrugged up to prevent the bar from contacting the collarbones and from compressing the carotid arteries. While elbow position is actually secondary to shoulder position in terms of securing the barbell, the elbows should be lifted as high as possible to further secure the position. The actual hand, wrist, and elbow positions possible will vary among athletes based on arm segment length and flexibility. Arm segment length issues can often be worked around by widening the hand placement. Not all 4 fingers must be under the bar, although if an athlete can do this, it is preferred. To reduce possible pressure of the barbell against the throat, the athlete can simply flatten the curve of the cervical spine by pulling the head straight back, not tilting it back. The movement of the front squat conforms to the criteria outlined previously for the squat in general. The importance of maintaining an upright torso will become extremely clear to the athlete who fails to adhere to this positioning and quickly finds the back rounding forward, the barbell's weight driving the arms down, and with heavy enough loads, the bar dropping to the floor. The recovery out of the bottom of the squat is aided by the effort to drive the elbows up and the shoulders through the bar. In addition to encouraging continued upper back extension in an upright torso, this drive of the elbows is a mental cue for speed and aggression. In this initial learning stage, the athlete should pause in the bottom of the squat to establish balance and position and continue improving flexibility. Once the positions and movement are consistent, a rapid transition utilizing the bounce should be the default for the front squat to prepare the lifter for the clean recoveries. As with the snatch, there will be occasions when the clean is not completed successfully and the athlete must safely discard the barbell. Unlike in the snatch, however, there is only one desirable option for missing the clean, dumping the bar forward. With an empty or lightly loaded bar, the lifter should practice this procedure as he or she did for the snatch. From the bottom of the squat, the athlete will need to be the most aggressive in his or her exit. Pushing the bar forward, the athlete will jump the feet and hips back out of the way as far as possible. This jump back is critical. Many times in a failed clean attempt, the bar is not racked securely or at all, and will immediately begin dropping. If the athlete doesn't move the hips back quickly and push the bar away enough, the bar will drop onto his or her thighs. When pushing the bar away, the athlete must be careful not to drop the elbows onto the knees. The learning progression drills for the clean follow the same order and principles of those for the snatch. If the snatch section has been skipped with plans to learn the clean first, it should be viewed before proceeding. Much of the foundation and many details of the following drills are discussed with regard to the snatch and will need to be viewed in order to complete the understanding of the following progression. The mid-hang pull drill for the clean learning progression is identical to its snatch counterpart with the exception of the narrower hand placement and the corresponding position of the barbell against the body. After studying the mid-hang position momentarily, the athlete will start by slowly extending the knees and hips together, finishing with a slight hip hyperextension with the glutes and the weight back on the heels. It's important the shoulders stay in front of the bar until it comes into contact high on the thighs, and that the athlete actively engage the back and shoulders to pull the bar back and up into the hips. This movement should be gradually sped up until the athlete is driving aggressively with the legs and popping the hips at the top. The purpose of this drill is to teach the delivery of the barbell to the rack position on the shoulders. The precision of this movement is imperative. A smooth delivery of the bar to the shoulders can be the deciding factor in the success of heavy cleans. The athlete will begin by holding the barbell in the scarecrow position with the hook grip set and the clean hand placement. In this position, depending on arm segment length and flexibility, the barbell will be resting against the body between the lower and mid chest. The elbows must remain above the bar and out to the sides as much as possible. From the scarecrow position, the athlete will pull the bar back and up to the shoulders while bringing the elbows around it, pushing the shoulders forward and up, lifting the elbows, and relaxing the grip as the bar settles into the rack position. The key point in this movement is that the elbows pivot around the bar, rather than the bar pivoting around the elbows. The proximity of the bar to the body is absolutely critical for a smooth delivery. This can be best achieved by attempting, from the high and out elbow location of the scarecrow position, to pull the bar back into the shoulders by retracting the shoulder blades and pulling the elbows back to initiate their rotation around the bar, rather than simply dropping them straight down and losing tension on the arms and shoulders. The athlete should maintain the grip around the bar until it's resting on the shoulders. This movement can be performed slowly initially to lay the movement pattern, and the speed increased gradually until the elbows are whipping into place as quickly as possible without the bar crashing onto the shoulders. This drill simply adds the initial pull of the bar from its starting position at arm's length to the scarecrow position from which the previous drill was started. Again, this movement can be performed slowly initially to ensure correct movement of the bar and elbows before increasing to full speed. The keys to this movement are the orientation of the elbows and resulting path of the bar. It's important the athlete not lean over the bar or allow the shoulders to round forward. With the athlete in the tall position to start, the elbows must be turned out to the sides and the bar kept in immediate proximity to the body. If the elbows are allowed to travel backward prematurely, the bar will fail to reach adequate height, and the likelihood of the bar swinging out away from the body and crashing onto the shoulders will increase. This drill should be practiced until consistently smooth and accurate. The scarecrow clean is similar to the rack delivery practiced earlier, but introduces an actual pull of the body under the bar. The athlete will begin in the same scarecrow position and perform the same movement with the arms, but will now simultaneously transition the feet from the pulling to receiving position and sit into a partial squat. This drill will be more successful if the athlete attempts to begin the foot movement before the arm movement to ensure he or she is pulling the body down instead of pulling the bar up. Once the athlete is comfortable with the drill to a partial squat, it should be performed with a full squat. The bar should be racked just as quickly as in the former, and the squat ridden down into the bottom. The tall clean is identical to the tall snatch with the exception of the receiving position of the bar. This exercise will often prove beneficial for athletes later in their training in cases of slow or inaccurate third pulls. Beginning in the tall position, the athlete will again attempt to initiate the transition of the feet from the pulling to receiving position first, then pull down under the bar aggressively with the same arm mechanics practiced previously. There should be minimal upward movement of the bar, and it should remain as close to the body as it has in the previous drills. The athlete should perform this drill with a partial squat first. When the tall power clean can be performed accurately, the athlete should move on to a full squat. Again, even if squatting completely under the bar, the turnover and racking of the bar should be performed as quickly as possible, securing the bar on the shoulders well before the bottom of the squat. The final drill in the clean learning progression assembles the previous components into a clean from the mid-hang position, initially a power clean. Beginning in the mid-hang position, the athlete will extend the knees and hips aggressively, pulling the bar back and up toward the hips with the back and shoulders. At the peak of extension, the athlete will immediately initiate the pull under the bar with the arms, keeping the elbows rotated to the sides and the bar as close to the body as possible, and transitioning the feet into the receiving position. As the elbows reach their peak height, the athlete will pull the bar into the shoulders and whip the elbows around quickly, delivering the bar smoothly to the rack position on the shoulders. Once the athlete is comfortable with the partial squat receiving position, the lift should be performed with a full squat. When performing the clean, the athlete should still attempt to turn the bar over and rack it on the shoulders as quickly as possible and ride it down into the squat. The athlete has now performed the power clean and clean from the mid-hang position. The process of moving the starting position to the floor will follow the same progression used for the snatch. Our first step in teaching the pull from the floor is the starting position. The criteria for the clean starting position are no different than those outlined with regard to the snatch. The only noticeable changes will be the greater height of the shoulders and hips and the limited flare of the knees due to the narrower grip of the clean. We have the same two basic criteria for the starting position as we did for the snatch. The barbell should be placed over the balls of the feet, and the arms should be oriented approximately vertically when viewed from the side of the athlete. The feet will remain in the same pulling position used to this point, and the knees will be flared to the sides as much as the arms will allow. The back should be set in complete extension, and the head oriented straight forward along with the eyes. With our starting position established, we need to rise to a standing position with the bar. Our goal is to keep the shoulders over the bar as long as possible, keep the bar in immediate proximity to the body, and maintain balance over the feet. The athlete should tighten the starting position and squeeze the bar off the floor. No jerking should occur. The lift at this stage should be slow and controlled with a focus on maintaining correct positioning. Below the knees, the barbell should be close to the shins, but not in contact. As the bar passes the knees, the athlete must continue engaging the back and shoulders to pull it toward the body to maintain proximity. The bar should come into contact with the body as it reaches the upper thighs. At this point, the shoulders should still be very slightly in front of the bar. Hip extension will then be completed with activation of the glutes, bringing the shoulders slightly behind the hips in the finished position. The clean deadlift should be practiced until the athlete demonstrates consistently correct positioning and balance. To progress from cleaning from the floor, we'll use a 3-position clean, working from the top down as we did for the snatch. This series will first be performed with power cleans before performing cleans into the full squat. The athlete will clean deadlift the bar and carefully lower to the mid-hang position. This position should be set long enough to ensure its correctness and to allow the athlete to settle into it with proper balance and tension. Once set correctly, the athlete will perform a power clean. With the completion of the first power clean from mid-thigh, the athlete will lower the bar to the top of the knees. Once this position is set, the athlete will power clean again. It's important to remember that from this position, the first movement should be leg drive against the floor to bring the bar to mid-thigh before the final hip extension is initiated. The bar will then be lowered to the floor for the final power clean in the series. At this point, the pull from the floor should be slow and controlled. The priority is maintaining correct positioning, and more specifically, moving into the correct mid-thigh position with the shoulders over the bar before cleaning. After becoming comfortable with the 3-position power clean, the athlete will repeat the series with cleans. Again, the lift should be identical. The athlete will still extend completely, turn the bar over and secure it on the shoulders as quickly as possible, but will now continue to sit into a full squat. Once the athlete demonstrates an ability to clean well from the floor, the hang positions can be eliminated. The athlete is now capable of performing the complete clean and power clean. The jerk is the final phase of the clean and jerk, in which the barbell is lifted from the shoulders to overhead. Although appearing at first glance to be entirely removed from the more obviously comparable snatch and clean, the jerk is in principle identical to these two lifts. The athlete initially creates force against the platform to accelerate the barbell upward, and then uses the barbell's inertia to push him or herself down underneath it. Just as with the snatch and clean, there are a range of possible grip widths for the jerk, each end with its own benefits and drawbacks. Wider grips will reduce the distance the bar must travel, but will also produce more disadvantaged pressing mechanics for the arms and shoulders. Initially, athletes can simply use their clean hand placement for the jerk, approximately half a fist to a fist width outside the shoulders. After becoming more experienced with the movement, they can experiment with different hand widths to find what best suits their own strengths and weaknesses. There are 3 variations of the jerk with regard to the receiving position: the power jerk, squat jerk, and split jerk. The power jerk, generally considered synonymous with the push jerk, is named such because the receiving position is identical to those of the power snatch and power clean. feet in the squat stance, and thighs above horizontal. While the power jerk is a fairly common training exercise, it's a comparatively rare competitive jerk style because of its great demand on bar elevation and precision. The squat jerk is identical in foot position to the power jerk, but as the name implies, the ultimate receiving position is a squat. This requires less elevation of the bar than the power jerk, but also introduces a few unique elements of difficulty. Flexibility is an immediate limiting factor for most athletes. Additionally, the need for precision in bar placement is even greater than in the power jerk. Finally, the athlete must be able to stand from the bottom of a squat, often from a dead stop, with a bar overhead immediately after cleaning it. It's an extremely rare individual who possesses the flexibility, precision, and leg strength to make this jerk style successful. The split jerk is by far the most common style used by weightlifters for very simple reasons. It allows relatively great receiving depth while keeping recovery from such depths relatively easy, accommodates much greater imprecision in the overhead position of the bar than the power or squat jerk, and provides greater stability in all directions than the power or squat jerk. Just as in the snatch and clean, there will be two foot positions for the jerk, the drive position and the receiving position, which will depend on the jerk style. The drive position for the jerk is essentially the same as the pulling position for the clean and snatch. The feet approximately under the hips and turned out slightly. Athletes can experiment with variations in width and external rotation to find what works best for them. In teaching the athlete the receiving position for the split jerk, the first order of business is determining which leg the athlete will lead with. Nearly invariably, athletes will know intuitively which leg they'll feel more comfortable with in the front before ever having performed a split jerk. If this is not the case with a certain athlete, simply instruct him or her to perform a lunge. With little exception, the athlete will naturally step out with the preferred lead leg. Following this, it's always wise to have the athlete switch legs to simply feel the position. If he or she is an exception to this rule, it should be immediately obvious. Once the lead leg is chosen, the athlete will enter a lunge position with the determined lead leg forward. The width of the feet should be at least as great as it is in the athlete's squat stance to create lateral stability. The athlete's lead foot will be flat on the floor with the weight focused near the heel, and the foot either straight forward or the toe turned in slightly. The heel of the back foot should be elevated and the weight driving through the balls of the foot. The heel should not be elevated so much that the lifter is on the toes. The rear toe will be turned in to keep the foot in line with the lower leg as it would be if standing or squatting. Because the leg will be oriented at an angle away from the body, if the foot is straight forward, the ankle will not be aligned with the force traveling down that leg. The length of the split should be adjusted until the shin of the lead leg is approximately vertical with the front thigh at an approximately 20 to 40 degree angle relative to the floor. The back knee must remain bent. This relieves tension on the calf, allowing the heel to remain elevated, preventing hyperextension of the knee upon receipt of the weight, and it relieves hip flexor tension on the pelvis, preventing hyperextension of the lumbar spine. Most importantly, this bend in the back knee allows the athlete to move straight down and remain in a supporting position under the bar, rather than shifting forward. This split depth can be considered a default position for jerking and should be adjusted according to the demands of increasing weight. The depth of the hips in the split during an actual lift will be determined by how high the bar is elevated, and consequently how far below it the lifter must push himself in order to receive it with fully extended arms. The torso should be essentially vertical, although inclined forward very slightly as required by the correct overhead positioning. The spine should remain in neutral curvature. If the lower back is hyperextended, either the back knee is not bent enough or the athlete's hip flexors need to be stretched. Note that with the weight centered over the base, there will be slightly greater pressure on the lead foot than the back because of its greater proximity to the center of mass. It will suffice for the athlete to simply make the effort to balance equally between the feet. Once the athlete has become familiar with the correct split position, the transition from the drive to the receiving position can be drilled. The lifter will start in the drive position. From here, he or she will move the feet as quickly as possible to the split receiving position without excessive elevation of the feet. The athlete needs to keep the weight over the heels in the drive position and make the effort to land with the weight balanced evenly between the front and back feet. It's very important that the athlete move the hips straight down. Commonly, athletes will leap forward into the split position, driving the chest forward and placing too much weight on the lead leg. From the split position, the athlete will recover to standing by first stepping approximately a third of the way back with the front foot, and then forward the rest of the way with the back foot. This will reposition the feet directly under the bar while minimizing movement of the bar overhead and limiting the opportunity for instability. As with the snatch and clean, athletes should practice missing the jerk safely. The fundamental idea is of course the same as the other two lifts. Guide the bar away from the body and move the body out of the way as quickly as possible. A PVC bar or lightly loaded barbell can be used to practice missing. Jerks can be missed in the front or in the back. As is the case with the snatch, which direction the bar is dropped will depend on which direction it's already moving, not the lifter's preference. For the more common misses in front, the lifter needs simply to jump back from the bar while pushing it away with the hands, making sure to quickly bring back the lead leg if split jerking. If the lifter instead overshoots the body or brings the bar behind the base of support, it will be lost behind. Most likely the arms in this case will have achieved lockout, but the bar will not be supported by the body. Lifters typically react immediately to this and bend the elbows to guide the bar back and down while jumping forward. Just as with the snatch and clean, the athlete has learned the receiving position for the jerk and now can learn the technique of the lift itself. As was the case with learning the clean, a barbell or light technique bar should be used for the following learning progressions. Introducing the jerk dip position to a new lifter is simple in principle, yet often proves surprisingly difficult because of the awkwardness of the position. The feet will be placed in the drive position, approximately under the hips and turned out slightly. When viewed from the side, a vertical line can be drawn through the barbell, hip, and ankle. To enter the dip position, the athlete will bend the knees, allowing the hips and shoulders to travel straight down through that same vertical line. The spine should remain neutral. The pelvis can't be allowed to tuck under. The feet should remain flat and the lifter's weight over the heels. The knees should move in line with the feet just as they would in a squat rather than being allowed to move straight forward or to dive inward. The depth will usually be shallower than the athlete thinks it should be. The bottom position should allow balance over the heels, flat feet, and a strong mechanical position. Depth will be refined as the athlete spends time actually jerking. Before initiating the dip, the athlete should tighten the leg muscles rather than standing on a loose knee lock. This will create a smooth initiation of the dip rather than a sudden drop during the moment of slack. This slow dip should be drilled until the athlete can consistently maintain the proper upright posture and balance over the heels. The next order of business is establishing a new rack position that will be used for the press, the push press, and the jerk. For the clean, our priority is securing the bar on the shoulders and connecting it to the trunk as tightly as possible in order to support the load during recovery. For the jerk, we need to have the same direct connection between the barbell and the trunk, but we also need to optimize pressing mechanics, for obvious reasons in the press, and in preparation for the continued arm drive of the push press and the drive under the bar in the jerk. This rack position must also encourage the correct bar path for all three lifts. We begin with the clean rack position because securing the bar on the shoulders must take precedence over an advantageous pressing position of the arms. From the clean rack position, the athlete will push the hands in as deep under the bar as possible while keeping the grip loose, continue pushing the shoulders forward and up, pull the elbows down into the sides, and lift the chest and spread the lats. The elbows should always remain at least slightly in front of the bar, never directly below or behind. This position is extremely demanding of very specific shoulder flexibility and may not be possible immediately for many athletes. Any modification should prioritize the bar's security on the shoulders over hand and elbow position. The press behind the neck will introduce the athlete to the proper overhead position for the jerk. The lifter will place the bar across the back of the shoulders as he or she would for a back squat with the hands at the previously established width and no hook grip. The elbows should be oriented down as much as possible and neutral upright posture should be maintained. The shoulder blades should be retracted fully. In this starting position, the bar is positioned in the same vertical plane in which it will need to be as it's pressed overhead, and the torso is already inclined forward slightly as it will need to be. The athlete will simply press the bar straight up without moving the torso. This position is identical, other than grip width, to the overhead position of the snatch. The shoulder blades must be completely retracted and slightly upwardly rotated. Again, it's usually easiest for the athlete to think of pinching the top inside edges of the shoulder blades together. When viewed from the side, the bar should be over the base of the neck. The bar can be adjusted as needed, and the athlete should remain here for a few seconds to become familiarized with the position. This should be a very active position with a focus on scapular stability and forceful elbow extension. As with the snatch, the grip on the bar should not be any tighter than necessary. While the purpose of the press behind the neck was to familiarize the athlete with the proper overhead position, the purpose of the press is to teach the athlete how to correctly move the bar from the shoulders to its final position, which will require some additional movement of the torso, the head, and the bar. From the jerk rack position, the athlete will initiate the drive of the bar up, placing a very slight backward angle on it. This effort to press the bar back through the face will ensure better positioning and prevent the common error of pushing the bar away from the body and leaning backward excessively. The athlete must press the bar in as direct a line as possible to its final position. In order to do this, the face must be pulled back out of the way. The athlete should pull the face straight back, tilting the head minimally as the bar passes the chin. This repositioning of the face can be started while the bar is still racked on the shoulders to reduce the magnitude of the shift that will be necessary as the bar passes. The same focal point straight ahead should be easily maintained during this movement. As the bar leaves the shoulders, the elbows should move out and under the bar rather than remaining in front of it. The torso may also need to lean back slightly as the bar passes in front of the face. Any layback should remain restricted to what is absolutely necessary. Once the bar has passed the head, the lifter must push his or her head forward again through the arms in order to achieve the overhead position learned when pressing behind the neck, placing the bar over the base of the neck. The bar will also travel backwards slightly because it no longer has body mass behind it to counterbalance it as it did in the starting position. The press should be practiced until the bar path and elbow movement are smooth and consistent and the overhead position is correct and stable. The push press is an intermediate movement combining elements of the press and the jerk to introduce the athlete to initiating the upward drive of the bar with the legs. We'll first perform the push press from behind the neck. This allows the simplest movement to the overhead position, giving the athlete an opportunity to focus first on the dip and drive of the lift. With the bar racked securely on the back of the shoulders, the hands placed at jerk width, and the feet in the drive position, the athlete will prepare for the dip and drive by taking in air, stabilizing the torso and tightening the legs. Once the lifter is stable, he or she will begin the push press. The speed of the dip must be controlled to prevent separation of the bar from the shoulders by accelerating gradually from the top. The transition must be powerful and the lifter must prevent the torso from leaning forward. Once the direction has been reversed, the athlete will drive straight up with the legs, attempting to achieve maximal acceleration of the bar. As the legs and hips reach full extension, the arms must be brought in to continue the bar's path upward. The grip on the bar should remain loose until the bar leaves the shoulders to prevent premature pressing. Athletes will naturally rise onto the balls of their feet at the end of the leg extension, just as they do with the final extension of the snatch and clean due to the aggressiveness of the leg drive. However, the athlete must keep the weight back over the heels. Overhead, the lifter must continue to actively and aggressively hold the correct structure by keeping the shoulder blades squeezed tightly together and the elbows extended forcefully. Next, we'll move the bar into the jerk rack position. The push press adds the element of navigating the bar past the head and into the correct overhead position. The lifter will take in a proper breath and take a moment to settle on the heels, tighten the legs, and stabilize before initiating the dip. The head can be pulled back slightly to prepare for its movement out of the bar's path. Allowing the bar to remain settled completely on the shoulders, the athlete will dip with control, maintaining the balance on the heels and keeping the trunk vertical. At the bottom of the dip, he or she will immediately drive up and push against the ground aggressively with the legs to accelerate the bar upward. Once the legs finish their extension, they should remain tight to lock the knees straight and provide a solid platform to push against. The push press must be finished with the athlete pushing the head and chest through the arms to lock the bar out in the correct position over the base of the neck with the weight balanced across the feet. Every rep must finish with correct and active scapular retraction and forceful elbow extension. The athlete should hold each rep for at least a second overhead before lowering the bar. The push press should be practiced until the athlete is able to perform it with consistently correct positioning and timing. Now that the athlete has learned to accelerate the barbell upward with the legs and transition to pushing with the arms, we need to introduce the movement of driving the body under the bar as we will in a jerk. Again, we'll start with the bar behind the neck to allow a simple bar path and torso position while focusing on the new elements. We'll further simplify this step by performing a partial movement to isolate the drive down under the bar. The athlete will press the bar approximately halfway up and pause, stabilizing with the breath and settling the weight over the heels. Once the athlete has set this partial press position, he or she will initiate the transition of the feet to the power jerk receiving position while aggressively driving down under the bar with the arms, receiving it with locked elbows at approximately quarter squat depth. The athlete should attempt to lock out the elbows at the same time the feet reconnect with the platform. In the jerk, the feet will reconnect prior to elbow lockout, but the attempt to achieve this timing will encourage greater elbow speed. Once the bar has been received and stabilized in the proper position, the lifter will recover to a standing position with the arms remaining extended. The lift does not end until the athlete is standing fully again and the bar is stabilized overhead. With the basic movement of driving down under the bar introduced, we'll now bring the bar to the front. With the feet in the drive position and the bar in the jerk rack position, the athlete will press the bar halfway up as he or she did in the previous drill. Because at this point in a jerk or push press, the head will be pulled back to clear a direct path for the bar, it should be in the same position at the start of this drill, with the bar in immediate proximity to the forehead. From this starting position, the athlete will drive under the bar while transitioning the feet to the receiving position, attempting to lock out the elbows as the feet reconnect with the floor, and finishing at quarter squat depth. The press has introduced the athlete to the movement pattern of the arms and the overhead position, and the push press has taught the athlete how to generate the initial acceleration of the bar with the legs. The power jerk will now introduce the idea of changing directions and moving the body under the bar after an upward leg drive without the distraction of the dramatic foot transition of the split jerk. The power jerk behind the neck is simply a combination of the push press behind the neck and the tall jerk behind the neck. The lifter will place the feet in the drive position, stabilize the trunk with air, and settle on the heels, then dip and drive the bar up as in the push press. When the lifter has completely extended the legs and accelerated the bar as much as possible, he or she will rapidly change directions by transitioning the feet to the receiving position and pushing him or herself under the bar with the arms to receive it with locked elbows and quarter squat depth. The power jerk behind the neck should be practiced until the athlete is capable of performing the exercise with a complete leg drive, no hesitation at the top, and a quick and complete arm drive under the bar. When the athlete has become comfortable with the basic movement of the jerk, the bar can be moved to the rack position in front to incorporate the shift in torso and bar positions that must occur in the jerk. The dip and drive phase of the lift is no different than that from behind the neck, with the exception that the torso begins slightly behind vertical rather than already inclined slightly forward. Once the proper rack position is established, the athlete will draw in his or her breath, tighten down the musculature of the torso, and take a moment to settle on the heels and stabilize. This shift to the heels will typically be visible. At no time should the balls of the feet lift from the floor, as this rocking will usually cause athletes to subsequently rock forward farther than they started. A smooth acceleration down into the dip is necessary to prevent the bar from separating from the shoulders. Often athletes will maintain the initial standing posture with a passive knee lock. This creates slack in the system as the dip is initiated and a momentary unsupported drop, which can cause the bar to separate from the shoulders. To prevent this, the athlete should tighten the quads before initiating the dip to ensure immediate tension and a controlled downward acceleration. The arms and shoulders must remain in the same position throughout the dip and drive to ensure the bar's security on the shoulders. Again, this can be best encouraged by keeping the grip relaxed until the bar leaves the shoulders. It's important that the lifter attempt to keep his or her weight balanced over the heels. If the weight is too far forward, the dip and drive will be redirected forward, pushing the bar away from the lifter. This does not mean the pressure on the foot will not at any time shift forward to the balls of the feet, simply that the center of mass will remain farther back as it does. After a quick and smooth transition at the bottom of the dip, the lifter will drive the bar vertically with as much force and speed as possible. When in the learning stages and using light weights, the force will need to be reduced somewhat to allow a jerk. If the force is too great, the light weight will be overhead before the athlete even has a chance to drive under the bar. As the bar leaves the shoulders, the lifter will quickly pull his or her head straight back out of the way to allow the bar an uninterrupted line of travel past the face, after which it will be brought back into its final position and the torso will incline forward slightly. At the same time, the feet will need to be transitioned to the receiving position as quickly as possible. It's important to understand that what drives the body down is the push against the bar with the arms. Just as in the snatch and clean, gravity cannot be relied on to relocate the body below the bar. An aggressive drive against the bar is necessary. Once the bar and lifter are stable in the receiving position, the athlete can return to standing with the bar overhead. The jerk balance is a drill that emphasizes the motion of driving the hips under the bar during the split jerk. With the bar in the jerk rack position, the athlete will enter a partial split position. The easiest way to find this position is to step out into the full split and then bring the front foot back about a foot length. From this partial split position, the athlete will dip straight down and drive straight back up. Once the upward drive is complete, the athlete will lift the front foot, keeping the balls of the back foot planted, and drive the hips and lead foot forward into the full split position while driving the bar overhead. The key to this drill is to push the entire trunk forward under the bar rather than simply leaning the chest forward through the arms. This will also provide the feeling of keeping the weight back and ultimately balanced between the 2 feet rather than jumping too heavily onto the front foot. While the chest will need to push through the arms slightly to achieve the correct overhead position of the bar over the base of the neck, this occurs after the feet have reconnected with the platform. The athlete at this point is capable of jerking and is familiar with the split receiving position. We can now introduce the split jerk itself. As has been the pattern to this point, we'll begin with the bar behind the neck first to allow more focus on the new element of foot positioning. The athlete will perform a controlled dip to maintain connection with the bar, transition quickly at the bottom, and drive straight up with the legs. As the legs complete extension, the athlete will quickly move the feet to the split position, driving against the bar to push the hips straight down and locking the elbows. With the bar starting in back, the torso is already where it will need to be in the receiving position, so no movement should occur. Likewise, the bar is already in the correct position and should simply move straight down during the dip and straight up during the drive. The weight upon securing the bar overhead should be evenly balanced between the front and back feet. Once stable, the athlete will recover by stepping back a third of the way with the front foot and the remaining distance forward with the back foot. We can now finalize the progression by performing the split jerk from the front. Everything discussed with regard to the dip and drive of the push press and power jerk applies to that of the split jerk. The athlete will secure the bar in the jerk rack position, take in air, and settle back onto the heels with the legs tight. Again, the face can be pulled back partially at this point to prepare for its upcoming pullback completely out of the way of the bar. Once stabilized in this position, the athlete will dip smoothly, keeping the hands loose, the rack position unchanged, and the torso upright, transitioning rapidly and driving straight back up aggressively with the legs. Just as with the press and push press, it will be helpful for the athlete as the bar leaves the shoulders to think of driving it backwards slightly as it moves up. The athlete will pull the face straight back to clear a path for the bar and move it forward through the arms again as the bar passes. As the bar leaves the shoulders, the feet will begin transitioning to the split position. The feet should move out to the split position with no more elevation than necessary. The athlete will continue driving aggressively against the bar, forcing him or herself down as the feet move into position. The athlete should think of pushing the hips forward and down under the bar and keeping the chest up as part of the effort to move the front foot forward. The slight forward shift of the chest through the arms to move the torso into position under the bar should actually occur after the feet have already reconnected with the floor in the proper position. Athletes should allow the legs to bend as the weight is received to ensure complete lockout of the elbows. This will allow natural adjustments to be made to the split depth to correct for imperfect foot placement or timing, as well as slight fore and aft movement to improve balance. If the back knee is not allowed to flex along with the front, it will drive the lifter forward as he or she settles under the weight, pushing the bar forward as well. Ensuring the back knee is allowed to flex in concert with the front will allow the athlete to drive and settle vertically down under the bar and maintain the necessary balance. Just as in the snatch, once the weight has been received overhead, the priority is stabilization before recovery. When learning and practicing, the split position should be held for a few moments before recovery. The athlete will recover by stepping a third of the way back with the front foot and the remaining distance forward with the back foot, continuing to actively push up against the bar and engage the shoulder blades. The athlete is now familiar with both the clean and the jerk in isolation. The clean and jerk as a single lift is considerably different than either lift performed individually. While the clean is quite taxing physically and psychologically, the clean and jerk presents even more of a challenge because of the need for both great strength and commitment for each, and the often remarkable fatigue that follows a heavy clean effort. There will be two basic transitions between the clean and jerk, the foot position and the rack position. There may be minimal or no difference in the foot placement for the squat and the jerk for certain athletes. For most athletes, however, following the recovery from the clean, the feet will be moved into the drive position in preparation for the jerk. This can be done in whatever manner is most comfortable and stable for the athlete. More dramatic will be the shift from the clean rack position to the jerk rack position, repositioning the hands deeper under the bar and bringing the elbows down and out. Occasionally, athletes will be able to reposition their hands without any movement of the bar. Far more commonly, the athlete will need to unload the bar from the shoulders briefly in order to drive the hands farther under it. After standing from a clean, the athlete can quickly dip and pop the legs to lift the bar slightly off the shoulders and create space to drive the hands in deeper under the bar and bring the elbows into position. However, this is an inefficient method at best. Better, the athlete can use the momentum already being generated from the recovery of the clean to pop the bar up as he or she reaches a standing position. This reduces time and effort that's better saved for the jerk. Despite the typical desire to hold the bar for as little time as possible between the clean and the jerk, the athlete must be patient and adequately prepare for the jerk. This involves ensuring correct balance on the feet, the proper rack position, enough control of heavy breathing to bring in sufficient breath to stabilize the torso, and the mental focus to perform the lift. The necessity of mental preparation is often underestimated. Clean recoveries will generally be very taxing both physically and mentally. No other lift will place as much weight over the lifter's head as the jerk, and this demands a great deal of confidence and commitment.